cooperation and greater connection. Modern leaders have to be at the center of a circle of ever-converging circles, if you will, where together we acknowledge the truth of our shared circumstances, and the rule of what we need to do is primarily because it works. And if it works, we have to be able to show one another that it works. As I've traveled around the country over the last year, I have been struck by a couple of things. One is that people of all ages repeat to me two phrases wherever I go. And I've given the party address now probably in 40 states. And the two phrases are new leadership and getting things done. The other thing that I've been struck by is a big generational shift that is underway in our country. And it is a shift, I think, for the better. And in other words, as I've traveled around the country, I've rarely met someone under 40 who denies that climate change is real. I rarely meet anybody under 40 who wants to scapegoat immigrants and blame them for what we need to do. And I rarely ever, in fact never, have met somebody under 40 who hates gay people or gay couples. And that's where our country's going. It's your country. In fact, you guys have a bigger stake in our future than I do at my age of 52. And I think we would all be best advised to speak and look to where our country's going. And if we do, and if we embrace and sell and promote policies of economic inclusion, policies of social inclusion, allowing more and more Americans to fully participate in the economic life of our country, to make real for more Americans the American dream, then we are going to not only make our country stronger and better, we're also going to lead this world. And our world's never needed our leadership more than she does right now. Look, my parents were born to the Great Depression. And then they became part of that great generation that won the Second World War. My dad flew 33 missions over Japan in a B-24 Liberator. And my mom, at the age of 17, joined the Civil Air Patrol, got her pilot's license, and safeguarded the Indiana coastline against German U-boating. But neither of them would ever have taken on the title that Tom Brokaw wanted to bestow on them of being the greatest generation. Because they raised the six of us to believe that every generation of Americans has not only the ability but the responsibility to become great by the actions they take and the choices we make, guided by our better angels. I have 15 years of executive experience. I'm the only Democrat in the race right now that can say that. When I was elected in 1999 mayor of Baltimore, our city was against the ropes. We had allowed ourselves to become the most addicted, the most violent, and the most abandoned city in America. And I brought our people together, all of our people, to make a safer, healthier, and a better place for kids. We brought forward a new way of governing, that instead of just measuring the inputs for government, like the budget inputs, we measured the outputs. And we embraced the modern technologies in those days, which sounds kind of funny to say now, the modern technologies of those days, which government's always slow to embrace, of GIS and the internet, to measure performance, to map it, and to make sure that all of our citizens were included and that their government could actually be individually responsive, just as their banks and their retailers were becoming individually responsive. And now our city's better, our population is growing again. When I was, although we still have big problems, and I'm glad to talk about that as we get into questions and some dialogue here. In 2006, I ran against an incumbent Republican governor, and we defeated him. And we brought this new way of governing to our state. And along the way, and through the course of the recession, we had to make a lot of decisions that individually were unpopular, but collectively we're all about including more of our citizens in the economic and the social life of our state. So we became the first state to pass a living wage. We extended prevailing wage to more projects. We raised the minimum wage. We increased minority and women's business participation goals to the highest in the nation, and we exceeded them in the recession. But along the way, we also did a few other things that are also about inclusion. And those things were to make voting easier and to encourage more people to vote. We passed the DREAM Act. We passed driver's licenses for immigrants so they could get to and from work. And we passed in the legislature and defended at the ballot marriage equality for all citizens in America. Never before, but in the middle of a recession, and by doing more for our schools rather than less, we made our schools the #1 public schools in America 5 years in a row, and we went 4 years in a row without a penny's increase to college tuition so that we can make college more affordable for more families. We invested more rather than less in our water and wastewater infrastructure to restore the health of our streams in our Chesapeake Bay. We invested more in our transportation infrastructure, and we maintained all through those 8 years not only a AAA bond rating, but achieved the highest median income of any state in the union and a faster rate of job creation than our neighbors to our north and our south. And get this, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is hardly a mouthpiece for the Maryland Democratic Party, named our state #1 in innovation and entrepreneurship 3 years in a row. I share all of those things with you to underscore the truth that our economy is not money. Our economy is people. And as Americans, we have made ourselves known the world over as the land of opportunity by practicing a brand of economics that in fact does put people first, that recognizes that a stronger and growing economy, that the source of that is actually a stronger middle class. It's not the consequence of growth. A stronger middle class is the cause of economic growth. And in Maryland and in Baltimore, we came together, we believed in the dream, and most importantly, we took action to make it real in our own time. And that's what we need to do again as a country. Because right now in our nation, because of rather bad decisions and poor decisions that have been made over these last 30 years, we've come a long way away from the economy my parents built in order to secure a middle-class future with middle-class opportunity for their kids. Instead, what we've arrived at is a point in our history where wealth and power are so concentrated in the hands of so very few that it's actually taking opportunity out of the homes of the many. And history shows us that there's only two paths that a nation can take when we allow ourselves to come to this point. On the one path is the sensible rebalancing for the common good we share. The other path is pitchforks, more of them, or stones, or riots, or more and more young people in rural and suburban areas all across our country killing themselves with heroin, because we've created an economy that is leaving half of us behind. The truth is that for all of the good that President Obama has done to save us from a second Great Depression and to get us on a path of positive job creation, incomes, earnings in the United States of America are actually stagnant or declining for 70% of us. And that, good people of Dartmouth, is the first time that's happened this side of World War II. And that's not the way your economy is supposed to work. That's not the way your country is supposed to work. That's not the American dream, and it does not need to be that way. We need to reconnect wage policies to our economic thinking. We need to cast aside the trickle-down economics that so many, and even the current crop of Republican candidates are peddling. They're like the greatest hits of the 80s and 90s, aren't they? But nostalgia is not all it used to be. It was their brand of economics that led to this situation where wealth gets concentrated at the top, regulations taken away even from Wall Street, and wages are kept low in order to keep us somehow competitive. Instead, we need to put wage policies at the center of our thinking. In the old days of my parents, Democrats, Republicans, and Independents used to regularly vote to keep the minimum wage not only ahead of inflation, but higher than the poverty level. We need to raise the minimum wage. We need to pay overtime pay for overtime work. We need to make it easier for people to collectively bargain and join unions rather than harder. And we need to move 11 million of our neighbors out of the shadows of society and into the mainstream And I'm talking about immigration reform. We are a nation of immigrants. And if we act according to our better angels and return to our true selves and the principles of generosity and compassion that's at the heart of what it means to be an American, we will make that dream alive again. We need to make the investments in education, not only K-12, we need to make the investments in infrastructure. The Chinese and the Indians aren't going to do this for us. They have nations of their own to build. These are things we need to do in order to create jobs and opportunity. And we also need to make college more affordable for more people. On the way here, I asked my able staff to do a fact check. I do believe that probably American graduates of college today graduate with more debt than kids in probably any developed nation on the planet. That's not the way the American dream's supposed to work. I mean, we shouldn't treat higher education like it's a toll road that the people going through it have to pay. This is something you're doing not only for yourselves and not only for your families. This is something you're doing for us, like U period S period, for us. When the more you learn, the more you earn, the better our economy does. We also need to step up and complete some unfinished business when it comes to preventing another crash. 7 years ago, we saw reckless speculation on Wall Street in the wake of pulling all regulation away, repealing Glass-Steagall, allowing the investment banks to make wagers and do so backed up by our money. We saw what that brought about, didn't we? It brought about the greatest crash we've seen since the Great Depression. Millions of people lost jobs. Millions of families then lost their homes. We need to follow through on the promise that we made to the American people to regulate Wall Street. If a bank is too big to fail without wrecking our national economy, then we need to break it up before it breaks us up. I mean, tell me how it is that you can get pulled over in our country for a broken taillight, but if you wreck the nation's economy, you're untouchable. Look, we've got work to do. We've got work to do. And it's not beyond our means, and it's not beyond our ability. And it is the law of all progress that it must pass through times of instability, so said Teilhard de Chardin. And right now, what you are seeing in your country oftentimes appears to all of us as a time not only of instability, but a time of gridlock, a time